all we focused on, really, because it's a tough subject. It's a tough subject for guys who've been in the trade for 20 years, right? So I don't expect you to become, engineers or anything like that by the time we're done, but I do hope that you at least get out of this class what the scope of what you're dealing with, kind of what to watch out for, the tricks and traps and things to avoid. They'll kind of keep you out of the, the dumb mistakes that aren't dumb because you don't really know what they are, but they're dumb, when you go back and look at the tricks they played on, you go, oh, I can't believe I fell for that kind of deal, right? And then, some management skills on how to take the test, kind of the way to look at it, your code book and some different things like that. But I'll tell you, there's going to be some homework. That's the only bad part about it. I'll tell you, when I started teaching these classes, it was 2008 was the first one I taught, and that's going on 6 years now. And when I first started, it was 2 days, and the lecture comprised of about 6 hours on Saturday and about an hour on Sunday. The rest of it was just some practice tests and, memorize this and memorize that and things of that nature. And boy, has that changed. So it really has become it's been a challenge, really, to kind of keep up with them. And I'll tell you, they're changing the exam questions so fast that it's darn near impossible to keep up with them. Like we used to, where you just, I tell you, the ICC, when they had the exam, the percentages of changes on that exam for the 3-year period that the code book was out was very little. And you could walk in the door without even having an application in, you could take it. So, those questions were on the street like you wouldn't believe, and that's what they call it. But that was one of the reasons why they brought PSI in. It kind of shifted things around. Now you're going to have your application in first before you take the test, and so it really kind of minimizes the exposure of the exam questions. And then they turn around and instead of having one question with fixed values, for example, there's a generator question out there. It's a 3-phase, 150 kVA generator, and it's feeding a 400 amp panel that's like 200 feet away. And I'll tell you, there's about 17 questions that have that exact same piece of equipment, same premise, same kind of basic equipment connected to it or that is feeding. Yet there's 17 questions that one's asking you for the size of GC that runs from the generator to the panel. One of them's asking you for the size of the EGC. One of them's asking you for a parallel set of feeders that's running from there to feed the 400 amp. One of them's asking for a single set. I mean, it's just they use the same stuff over and over and over again, but they change the numbers, so it's roughly the same subject matter, same area in the code book, same rules that apply, but you can't memorize them. There's just too many of them, right? So gone are the days of me being able to hand you a whole bunch of A, B, C's, and D's and have you go home and memorize them. Now you're going to have to really kind of know a little bit about what you're talking about, or it's just going to be tough on you. So, and that's what, that's fair. I mean, I can see that's a fair way of proving somebody's got some background on it, but that does mean that there's going to be no way in hell that we could cover every single thing that you need to know for this test in 3 days. But what I have done for you is a tremendous amount of work on this textbook. You get to take it home with you, and I've got a line item, let's see here, I'm not going to use yours, I got mine here. If you look in your page 21 and 22, I've got I could get it more detailed, but it'd be just as big as the book would be if I did anything more than that. So it's a line item day by day, study this day, study this the next day, so on and so forth. And I'm going to kind of explain to you how it all kind of fits in here in a bit, but expect to have about 2 weeks, roughly 14 days, between starting on Monday, and the time you take your test. Now, is there anybody in here scheduled for Monday? Oh, I always have it though.
Well, I'm taking it 3 times to come really close.
What are you making on, about 70? 68?
65.
That's good. Yeah, that's not, are you running out of time, or are you doing okay on your time?
Like there on time.
You feel like you're doing pretty good, then getting surprised at the end, or?
Yeah. And it was that when we can't cover 3 days.
Yeah, I'll tell you, they get but at least what I've done is I've taken an 870-page code book and tried to boil it down to just the stuff that's pops up more common than not. So it's not going to cover every single one of the small little oddball questions in there. However, I'll tell you, if I don't have 95% of it covered, I'm really surprised, because we really try. In fact, I don't really think anybody puts as much effort anymore. Ray Holder used to. Now he's kind of retired, medical retirement, I think. And then some of those outfits from out of state, they don't even know what Texas electricians do, really. So I wouldn't really put much to them. But In fact, I've probably kept my nose in it so much that I kind of pissed off TDLR and PSI lately, but that's all right. So the stickers and stuff that I'm gonna pass out to y'all, like I passed out to every class before, you're just gonna have to transfer them by hand. You're gonna have to handwrite these stickers in is what happened. So the last class here in Austin, I guarantee you somebody, by the way, does anybody in here work for TDLR? Raise your hand and say aye, or PSI, or any affiliate or attached or whatever. Yeah, I think somebody was either in the class you were in that last class, weren't you? Did you take the one in Austin, or is that the
Oh
one
yeah, in
before?
Austin, October.
That's the class, yeah.
Oh really?
Because 2 weeks after that class, they had a big meeting with PSI about those stickers. I kid you not, that was all about my stickers. Felt like I hit the big leagues whenever they're having, meetings and stuff like that. All right, that's not necessarily a good thing. All right, let's just talk about the test real quick, kind of get a brief overview. They tell you exactly what to study with PSI right there, so really, I don't know why you need me, because that's pretty clear as mud, isn't it? I mean, so where, like the second line item, for example, where would you find the majority of that? In the code book. If you're using this to study from, man, good luck. It's tough. It's really kind of a big scope coverage there. That second line item, I'll tell you, there's more references in the code book than you'd believe in that second line item, but majority of it has to do with ground and bottom.
All the 200s, 250s.
Yeah, a lot's going to be in 250. Quite a bit of it's going to be in 210, 220. Connections, electrical services, service equipment, things of that nature. Some of it's going to be in chapter 4, some of it will be in chapter 6, some of it chapter 7, because if you use a generator, for example, as a separately derived system, during a source of emergency, and you separate that grounding conductor from the utility power, your normal system, grounding conductor, you're going to have a different set of rules with the grounding and bonding. The separately derived systems is probably the widest area. If you do a article breakdown of it, there's probably 25, 26 different articles that have to do with separately derived system rules. Grounding and bonding mainly is where it is, but in chapter 7 you're going to have quite a bit of it. So, knowing how to study and how to break that down, if you look back a couple of pages in your textbook there, what I've done is I've kind of given you a brief kind of breakdown of what all is involved in each one of those sections. It starts on page 14. We're going back to where we were looking at that PSI excerpt there. So I've taken each one of them. What I've done is I've labeled each one of these as just basically section 1 all the way through section 10. So there's 10 line items that we're dealing with. And it makes sense that if you're going to be graded on, or if you're taking an exam on those line item categories, they're going to tell you at the end of that test exactly how well you did, how many out of the available questions there are. For example, that 16 questions there, if you're taking a master's test, that would be, let's just say you made 9 out of 16. So you know that you missed, 7? Yeah, 7 questions. That's easy math. If I'm having to scratch my head on that one, that's going to be a long weekend for y'all. 7 questions there that you missed, and so it's a good way to kind of gauge how to direct your study after you don't pass an exam based on how poorly you did in each one of those sections, right? So that's the first thing is to, if you're taking the test, how many of y'all have got an exam result in the last 6 months or so? All right, did y'all bring them with you by any chance? If you have them, can you pass them up to me? If you have more than one, that's even better. It kind of gives me a track record. If you don't have them with you, can you get them?
I'll bring it tomorrow.
Okay. And then that kind of helped me, plus even the pre-exams that you took here and the final exams that we give you on Sunday, I have those kind of categorized by the same line item deal, so I can get a feel for whether you're improving or not, or kind of hone in on what I think your biggest problems are. So, okay, so that stuff that you did with the pre-exam is really important, probably more important than you realize yet. But the section 2, for example, if you look on page 14, I've broken it down to articles 220, size, services in parts 2 and 3, option methods described. And then you got some in 550, 51, and 52, and then you've got references in 230. I mean, you can see just by looking at that kind of the scope of what you have to know to improve a score in line item 2. And it's one of the toughest line items up there for most, especially the master's exam. And for the journeyman, most of the journeymen, I think they're in that line item, you've got 9 questions. that's the journeyman's breakdown there. And out of 9, usually on the journeyman, they're pretty high. So most, I think on average, probably 6 or 7 out of 9 is what the journeyman score, which is really, one of your better line items for some reason, but it's the exact opposite for masters. And I think that's because of the granular bonding and some of the other things that they've got that are kind of, there's quite a few trick questions in there that they throw in on top of it. So not only is it a tough subject, but they throw in some that just intentionally mess you up on the master's level there. All right, so that's kind of a breakdown, and use this as a study guide. So even if I've talked to you and I've kind of given you my own notes, this is still a good, solid, resource as far as kind of looking at your score sheet and then picking out the ones to kind of practice on. But then I'll tell you, some of these things you got to be careful with because you go back and look at the masters. Let's say that you scored a 6 out of 16, which means you got 10 points there out of that second line item that you got to bring up the score. Well, obviously you can't ignore it because that's a lot of points. I mean, 10 points on that's 10%. You just can't ignore that. But line item 5 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the branch circuit calculation of conductors. For the masters, it's 15, but if you look at the journeyman's exam, it's almost a quarter of your exam. 18 questions out of 80 is darn near a quarter, almost 25%. So it's definitely not a line item that you want to ignore. And if you did, let's say you had 10 points out of line item 2 and 10 points out of line item 5, which for the journeyman would be impossible since you only have 9 questions in there. But let's just say that it's the same percentage. It would be better use of your time to put your efforts into that 10 points that you're losing in line item 5 than the 10 points that you're losing in line item 2. Because, I'll tell you, I don't expect you guys to be a master of every single one of these line items. You just can't be, right? Some of you guys are going to be good at grounded bonding and terrible at side services. Well, maybe all of us will be bad at both of them. But we'll see by the end of the weekend how that shapes up. But the bottom line is that you got to kind of not only figure out which ones that you can, obviously improve in, but which ones are the easiest kind of return on your investment and study, right? And so that's kind of what my last thing is that if you have exam results, if you'll send them to me, I'll try to get them kicked back out to you with some sort of, kind of a study guide that might hone them in. And since you guys are in Austin, y'all are really the only city that's got the